For Stephen Yettaw at St. Paul, Alberta, stone sculpting requires his complete and undivided attention, which is one of the things that makes it so appealing for him. Yettaw lives on his family's farm and operates heavy equipment as a day job, but for up to 6 months a year, he puts everything else aside and works full-time at his art. His interest in being a stone sculptor got started a number of years ago.
When I was younger, as a teenager, I messed around with making armor and swords and was into a lot of medieval type themes like making dragons and that. I started making them out of plaster of Paris, and I only did dragons because I was afraid people would judge me on my abilities. If I did a horse, they could say that doesn't look like a horse, but a dragon, they could never say, well, that's not a real dragon, because I can say, show me a real dragon.
His interest in dragons continues, as you can see in this sculpture, which was only completed a few days before our visit. The project took Yettaw 12 days, working 8 to 10 hours per day.
Now I went back to doing a dragon, and I discovered I could recreate the anatomy of the dragon. On this one, trying to figure out how I create wings and the body and make it look like it's something that could actually be a real animal. And you're just learning and actually relaxing, able to enjoy working the stone.
As you saw earlier, Yettaw creates some of his pieces with a chainsaw, including this one, which he calls Continuum. It consists of 3 movable pieces.
And with the chainsaw allows me to cut holes directly through a stone that you couldn't do with any other tool. And I like the idea of the geometry and also making a stone sculpture that can move around and always change. That's why I called it Continuum. It's an always changing sculpture based on how a person likes its shape. People can move it back to whatever position you like to see it in, or some people want a different feature, or you can change it every day, giving it a different type of look.
This white swan sculpture is quite special to Yettaw. It's made from the unique Carrara marble, a stone which is quarried in the Italian city of the same name. He did the project there at a local gallery and completed it without using any power tools.
They laughed at me when I said I was here to use just hammer and chisel. The lady told me that in 1 week I'd be begging to borrow her power tools. 2 weeks later, she came in with a group of tourists from Germany, and she was featuring me as the special artist from Canada coming here to do work only by hammer and chisel. Later she apologized to me, saying that they had sculptors from all around the world come and always bragged that they'd use hammer and chisel, but I was the first one that she ever saw stick to it.
Yettaw finished the swan sculpture with sandpaper, which drew a negative reaction from some prospective buyers.
And they actually liked the sculpture when it was a lot rougher and it wasn't a finished, polished product. And once I did finish it, they actually were no longer interested. So sometimes you carve for your own self and sometimes you carve for others, and it's hard to judge when to stop.
The sculptures cover a wide variety of themes, but a closer look reveals the strong influence of his farm background.
A lot of the animal influences from the animals on the farm. When I do horses, I actually take the horses out of the stall and I actually stand the horse beside me while I carve on the stone, using their body and their anatomy, studying it while I carve.
Yettaw enjoys the variety in his work, mastering the sculpting of farm animals as well as his portrayal of Greek mythology.
This one is titled Ixus, and Ixus was one of the warriors that went with Perseus to combat Medusa and to get her head. And I titled this one Ixus, being one of the warriors that I imagined would have looked into Medusa's eyes and been turned to stone. And then with the stone was rotten over here, so I actually removed the bad part of the stone and was able to give it a nice aged look where it looks like it's been standing for thousands of years in his natural pose when he was turned to stone.
He has created a series of architectural miniatures, including this scaled-down chair.
This is actually intended to be a chair about this high. I like interactive work, and I'd like to see, I was trying to convince an architect to use these in a park design where people could actually sit on these sculptures year-round and enjoy them.
Some artists insist that no one is allowed to touch their work, but Yettaw likes to encourage people to interact with his art whenever possible. He says with certain types of stone, it can even be beneficial.
It's when people touch granite or limestones or marbles, the more they touch and rub the stone, the acid off their fingers and the wear of the touching it slowly polishes the stone more and more, and actually gives it a nicer finish. It gives it an aged look, and I think it adds to the beauty of the stone.
Even though it's a lot more work than using power tools, Yettaw thoroughly enjoys the traditional method of stone sculpting with chisels.
This is actually one of the handmade ones from Italy. And to move a large amount of stone, a lot of times you use a point chisel. And what it'll do is leave a little pocket like that. And so you can take out areas. And if you were going to create a design, you could remove bulk areas around the design. And each time you hit, you spin the chisel a little bit. And so the squared edge takes a different surface each time.
When choosing a chisel, it's important to remember what type of stone you're working on.
In limestone and in marble, you can use these handmade chisels. And in granite, this one's actually tungsten carbide, where you have little inserts of tungsten carbide inside here. And they can stand up to actual granite stone. An example here, this is a big piece of granite. And I can actually carve the granite, and the pieces actually endure cutting into the granite. If you use the softer chisels, they'll actually break off or flatten if you carve into the granite with them.
Yettaw hopes to build his business to where he can be a full-time stone sculptor. His pieces are priced to fit almost any budget.
My prices range from anywhere from $5, $10 pieces to some pieces go as high as $8,000 to $10,000 right now. I price my work based on how much time I've put into it, how rare the stone is, and also how proud I am of the finished product.
Not only is it rewarding for him to create art out of rocks, he also finds it to be quite therapeutic. Because the work requires his complete concentration, it's a great way to relieve stress. Since his art is created on stone, he likes to think that thousands of years from now, it could be featured in a museum.